Welcome back to HOA Rejected. I thought it would be a warning. It was a campaign. I am standing in my driveway at 7 in the morning with a snowblower in one hand and my phone in the other, and Janice Kelly is already screaming at me from the sidewalk. "You are violating noise ordinance and creating a public nuisance," she shouts, her breath fogging in the freezing air. I have not even started the machine yet. The engine is off. I am holding the pull cord. She does not care. She is pointing at me with a salt bucket like it is a gavel, her red earmuffs sliding down over her dark brown ponytail, and she is telling me that the Snowcap Ridge Ridge Association has received a formal complaint, and I am being fined $250 for operating power equipment before 8 on a weekend. I look at her. I look at the snowblower. I look at my watch. It is 7:04. I have 56 minutes until I am allowed to clear my own driveway without being fined. She smiles. "You do not get an opinion. You get a fine schedule," she says. That is when I know this is not about snow. This is about control, and I am about to become her favorite target. I moved to Rochester 6 months ago for a remote network engineering job that pays well enough to afford a townhouse in a neighborhood that looked quiet and normal. Snowcap Ridge Ridge Association is a planned community on the east side, where the streets are named after ski resorts, and the rules are used as leverage, not guidance. I found that out the first week when I got a violation notice for parking my car in my own driveway overnight, because the guest pass was not visible through the windshield. I did not have a guest pass. I owned the unit. The notice came anyway. Janice Kelly is the pool and amenities chair, which in a community like this means she controls access like a bouncer and uses her clipboard to settle personal grudges. She has been on the board for 11 years. She knows every rule, she writes half of them, and she has decided that I am the problem. The snow is just the excuse. The complaint came from my neighbor 2 doors down, a guy I have never spoken to. Janice told me his name. She told me he called the HOA office at 6:30 to report excessive noise. I check my phone. There is no noise. The snowblower has not run. I ask her how he complained about noise that has not happened yet. She ignores the question. She taps her clipboard. "The complaint is filed. The fine is assessed. You have 14 days to pay, or we move to collections." I am dealing with a strict lender requirement because I am still in my first year of ownership, and my mortgage has an HOA compliance clause that lets them trigger penalties if I rack up violations. This is not just annoying. This is a threat to my credit and my loan terms. I tell her I have not broken any rule. She smiles again. "Noise ordinance is 8 on weekends," she says. I point at the snowblower. "The engine is off," I say. She shrugs. "The complaint has been filed. You can appeal at the next board meeting. That is 3 weeks away. The fine accrues interest daily." I spend the rest of the morning clearing my driveway by hand with a shovel because I am not giving her another excuse. It takes 2 hours. My back is screaming. My hands are numb. I pile the snow on the curb strip like every other house on the block. By noon, there is a new notice taped to my door. Violation: snow obstruction of public right-of-way. Fine: $150. I walk outside. My snow pile is 8 inches high and 2 feet from the curb. 3 houses down, there is a pile that is 4 feet tall and blocking half the sidewalk. No notice. I take pictures. I walk back inside and call the HOA office. The property manager answers with a forced smile in her voice. She tells me the curb strip rules were updated in December and emailed to all residents. I check my email. Nothing. She says they were sent to the address on file. I give her my email. She pauses. She says she will look into it. She does not call back. By the end of the week, I have 3 fines: noise ordinance, snow obstruction, and failure to clear ice within 24 hours of a freeze event. The ice fine is for a patch on my front steps that I salted twice. Janice came by with a ruler and measured it. She has photos. She has timestamps. She has a process. I start keeping my own log. I photograph everything. I save every email. I keep receipts. I am a network engineer. I understand access logs and audit trails. I know how to build a case. I just do not know what I am building it for yet. The next storm hits on a Wednesday, 6 inches overnight. I wake up at 5 and start clearing before work. I use the snowblower because I have to be online for a meeting at 8 and I do not have time to shovel. I keep it low and quiet. I am done by 6:45. I go inside. At 7:15, there is a knock. I open the door. Janice is standing there with her phone out, recording. "You ran power equipment before 8, she says. I check my watch. It is 7:16. I finished half an hour ago, I say. She shakes her head. I have a witness statement that you were operating a gas-powered device at 6:50. I stare at her. That is 10 minutes before 8, I say. She smiles. Exactly. Noise ordinance. Another 250. I close the door. She keeps knocking. I do not answer. She leaves the notice wedged in the doorframe. That afternoon, my snow removal contractor calls. He is not coming back. He says Janice showed up at his last job and tried to audit his shovel path with a tape measure and a level. She told him he was grading incorrectly and threatened to report him to the city. He does not need the drama. He refunds my deposit. I am on my own. I call 2 other companies. They are both on the HOA approved vendor list. They both tell me they are fully booked. One of them lets it slip that Janice called ahead and told them I was a problem client. I am being blacklisted in my own neighborhood. I go to the next board meeting. It is in the community clubhouse on a Tuesday night. 15 people show up. Janice is at the front table with the president and the treasurer. I sit in the back. I have my folder of photos and emails. I wait for public comment. The president opens the floor. I stand up. I explained the noise violation. I explained that the blower was off when she arrived. I show the timestamp on my phone. Janice interrupts. She says the complaint was filed by a resident, and the board has a duty to investigate. I ask who the resident is. She says that is confidential. I ask how I can defend myself if I do not know who is accusing me. She smiles. You do not get an opinion, you get a fine schedule. The room is silent. No one backs me up. I sit down. The president moves to the next item. My appeal is denied without a vote. After the meeting, a board member pulls me aside in the parking lot. His name is Carl. He is older, quiet, and he looks nervous. He tells me I am not the first. He says Janice has been doing this for 2 years. She picks a target, escalates violations, and forces them to sell or pay thousands in fines. The board knows. They do not stop her because she controls the vendor contracts and the budget. He tells me to be careful. He tells me to document everything. He does not offer to help in the meeting. He is scared, but he is the first person who has admitted this is not normal. I thank him. I go home and start building a timeline. I have 12 violations in 6 weeks. The total is over $2,000. The fines are doubling now because I have not paid. The HOA is sending letters on legal letterhead. They are threatening collections language, and I need to stop it before it impacts my credit. That is when the sudden rule reinterpretation hits. I get an email from the property manager. It says that based on a recent board review, all driveways must be cleared to bare pavement within 12 hours of snowfall cessation, and any visible ice or compacted snow is a violation. This has never been the rule. I check the HOA covenant. It says reasonable effort. I check the meeting minutes. There is no vote. I reply and ask when this was approved. The property manager says it has always been this way. I forward her the covenant language. She does not respond. 2 days later, I get a notice for inadequate snow removal. My driveway is clear. There is a thin layer of ice where the plow pushed slush against the apron. I salted it. It is melting. Janice measured it anyway. She has a photo. She has a ruler in the frame. The fine is $300. I call an attorney. He listens. He tells me HOA cases are expensive and slow. He says I can file a dispute, but the board will drag it out and keep fining me while we wait. He says the faster move is to force a vote at the annual meeting or catch them in a procedural violation. He charges $250 for the consult. I pay it. I do not hire him. I cannot afford to. But he gives me the angle. Procedure. The board has to follow their own rules. If they do not, the decisions are invalid. I go back to the meeting minutes. I start looking for gaps. The next storm is a big one. 10 inches. The plow comes through at 3 in the morning and buries every driveway on the block. I wake up at 5 and start clearing. I am out there for 90 minutes. I move the snow to the curb. I salt the apron. I salt the steps. I am done by 7. I go inside to shower. At 8, there is a pounding on the door. I open it. Janice is standing there with a clipboard and her phone. "You blocked HOA access," she says. I ask what she is talking about. She points to the mailbox cluster at the end of the block. There is a small frozen padlock on the access gate. She says I piled snow in front of it and prevented the mail carrier from opening the box. I look at the pile. It is 3 feet to the left of the gate. The gate swings out. The snow is not blocking anything. I tell her that. She takes a photo of me. She says the violation stands. She hands me a notice. $400, plus a hearing date. I am being called in front of the board for a formal violation hearing because this is now a pattern of non-compliance. That is when she says it. Make it public. I love watching people get embarrassed. She is smiling. She thinks she has won. I say nothing. I said almost nothing, because silence makes people talk. She keeps going. She tells me the board is considering a lien on my property. She tells me I should sell before it gets worse. She tells me no one wins against the HOA. I close the door. I go back to my laptop. I pull up the vendor files. I have been tracking the approved contractor list. 3 companies. All 3 have the same business address. I look it up. It is a registered agent service. I check the ownership records. All 3 are LLCs with the same manager. I cross-reference the name. It is Janice's brother-in-law. She is funneling all the snow removal contracts to family. And she is blocking independence to protect the monopoly. I screenshot everything. I save it. I do not know what I am going to do with it yet. But I know it is big. The hearing is scheduled for the following Tuesday. I spend the weekend building my case. I print the covenant. I print the meeting minutes. I print the emails. I print the vendor records. I organize it all in a tabbed binder. I make 2 copies. One for me, one for the board. I also pull the quorum logs. Every board vote requires a majority of seated members. I count the meetings. 3 of the last 6 did not have quorum. The rule changes were approved anyway. The votes are invalid. That is my trump card. I do not say anything. I just add the pages to the back of the binder. I am holding it close. I am waiting for the right moment. Monday night, I get a text from Carl. He tells me the board is planning to fast-track a lien vote at the hearing. He says Janice is pushing for it. He says they are going to try to rush it through quietly. I thank him. I do not sleep. I am up at 5 reviewing my notes. I check my email. There is a message from the property manager. She is CCing me on a notice that my account is past due and being referred to collections. I have not received a bill. I reply and ask for an itemized statement. She does not respond. I forward the email to my attorney contact. He tells me to show up at the hearing and demand a recorded vote. He tells me to make them go on record. I am ready. The hearing is at 7. I show up at 6:45. The clubhouse is cold. There are 8 people in the room. Janice is at the front with the president and the treasurer. Carl is in the corner. He does not make eye contact. I sit in the middle. I put my binder on the table. Janice sees it. Her smile fades a little. The president calls the meeting to order. He reads the violation summary. Noise ordinance. Snow obstruction. Ice hazard. Blocked access. He says the board has reviewed the evidence and determined that I am in willful non-compliance. He says the total fines are $4,200, and the board is voting tonight to authorize a lien. I raise my hand. He ignores me. I stand up. I say I have evidence. He tells me to sit down. I do not sit down. I open the binder. I pull out the covenant. I read the section on snow removal. Reasonable effort. I show the photos of my cleared driveway. I show the timestamps. I show the emails. I show the contractor blacklist. I show the vendor ownership records. I say the approved vendor list is a family monopoly, and the fines are retaliation for using an independent contractor. The room goes quiet. Janice stands up. She says that is a baseless accusation. I slide the LLC filings across the table. I say the records are public. The president looks at them. He looks at Janice. He does not say anything. If you are enjoying this HOA chaos, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of neighbor drama and petty revenge gone nuclear. I keep going. I pull out the meeting minutes. I show the quorum logs. I say 3 votes in the last 6 months did not have a majority. I say the rule changes are invalid. I say the fines are based on rules that were never legally approved. Janice is red in the face. She says the minutes are certified. I say the quorum requirement is in the bylaws. I point to the section. I say if the board wants to proceed, I will file a complaint with the state and request an audit. The president closes the folder. He says the board needs to table the lien vote pending further review. Janice explodes. She says I am wasting everyone's time. She says the violations are clear. She says the board has a duty to enforce the rules. The president cuts her off. He says the meeting is adjourned. Janice grabs her clipboard and storms out. I stay in my seat. Carl walks over. He whispers, "You just made an enemy." I say, "I already had one." The next morning, I get a certified letter. It is a notice of intent to file a small claims action. Janice is suing me personally for defamation and harassment. She is claiming I made false statements about her family and damaged her reputation. She is asking for $10,000. The court date is in 3 weeks. It is a Friday, a snow day courthouse. She is trying to force me into a hearing during a winter storm, so I will miss it and default. I call my attorney contact. He laughs. He says it is a slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. He says she is trying to scare me into backing down. He says I can file a motion to dismiss, but it will cost me. He says the better move is to show up and countersue for abuse of process. I ask how much that costs. He says $1,500 to start. I do not have $1,500. I thank him and hang up. I am on my own again. I start digging deeper. I pull every meeting packet from the last 2 years. I compare the vendor contracts. The snow removal budget is $60,000 a year. All of it goes to the 3 LLCs. I check the bids. There are no bids. The contracts are renewed automatically. I check the insurance certificates. They are all from the same agent. I check the agent. It is Janice's husband. The whole system is a closed loop. She is not just enforcing the rules, she is profiting from them. I screenshot everything. I save it to a cloud drive. I make a backup. I send a copy to Carl. I tell him this is bigger than fines. This is fraud. Carl does not reply for 2 days. When he does, it is a phone call. He is whispering. He tells me the board is meeting in a closed session tomorrow night. He says they are voting to remove him for leaking information. He says Janice knows he talked to me. He says he is done. He tells me to watch my back. I ask if he will testify. He says no. He says he has a business in town, and he cannot afford to be blacklisted. I understand. I do not push. But I know I am losing my only ally inside the room. The twist comes 3 days later. I get an anonymous email. No subject line. Just an attachment. It is a spreadsheet. A target list. 23 addresses. Mine is highlighted in yellow. Next to each address is a note. Foreclosure risk. Refinance window. New owner. Elderly. The list is a hunt. Janice is not picking random targets. She is picking people who are vulnerable. People who will pay or leave. People who will not fight back. I look at the column headers. There is a date field, a status field, a resolution field. Half the addresses are marked sold or paid in full. The other half are marked in progress. Mine says in progress, high priority. I check the email metadata. It came from inside the HOA domain. Someone on the board sent it. I do not know who. But I know it is real. And I know I am not paranoid. I forward the spreadsheet to my attorney contact. He calls me in 10 minutes. He says this is evidence of systematic harassment. He says if I can prove Janice created the list, I have a case for intentional infliction of emotional distress and possibly fraud. He says the HOA insurance will settle to avoid discovery. He says I need to get her on record. I ask how. He says bait her. Get her to admit the targeting. Get her to talk about the vendor relationship. Get her to threaten me. Record everything. I hang up. I know what I have to do. But I also know it is risky. If she figures out I am recording, she will bury me in legal fees before I can use it. The next storm is light. 2 inches. I clear it by hand. I do not use the blower. I do not give her an opening. I salt everything twice. I take photos every hour. I document the temperature. I document the melt rate. I am building a defensible record. At noon, Janice shows up. She has her clipboard. She walks my driveway. She measures the snow pile. She takes photos. She does not say anything. She leaves. An hour later, I get a notice. Violation, snow pile exceeds height limit. Fine, $500. I check the rules. There is no height limit in the covenant. I check the meeting minutes. There is no vote. I email the property manager. I ask where the height limit is documented. She replies with a PDF. It is a memo dated 2 weeks ago. It is signed by Janice. It is not a board resolution. It is not a rule. It is a memo. I print it. I add it to my binder. This is the move I have been waiting for. She just made a rule without a vote. That is a breach of authority, and it is exactly the kind of thing that will flip the board if I can force it into the open. The small claims court date is coming up. I spend a week preparing. I pull the complaint. Janice is claiming I defamed her by saying she runs a vendor monopoly. She is claiming I harassed her by filming her during a violation inspection. She is claiming I created a hostile environment. I pull my evidence. The LLC filings, the meeting minutes, the vendor contracts, the spreadsheet. I organize it into a timeline. I write a short statement. I practice it. I am not a lawyer, but I know how to present data. I know how to make a case. I just need the judge to listen. The court is downtown. It is a Friday morning. The forecast is calling for 6 inches starting at noon. Janice is betting I will not show. I show up at 8:30. The courthouse is quiet. I check in at the clerk window. I get a case number. I sit in the hallway. At 9, Janice arrives with her husband. She sees me. She does not expect me to be there. She looks annoyed. We are called into the courtroom at 9:45. The judge is older, tired, and clearly not interested in HOA drama. He asks Janice to present her case. She stands up. She says I made false statements about her vendor relationships and damaged her reputation in the community. She says I recorded her without consent. She says I created a pattern of harassment. The judge asks for evidence. She hands him a folder. He flips through it. He looks at me. He asks if I have a response. I stand up. I say the statements I made were true and supported by public records. I hand him my binder. I walk him through the LLC filings. I show him the vendor contracts. I show him the spreadsheet. I show him the memo Janice issued without board approval. The judge reads it. He looks at Janice. He asks if she issued the memo unilaterally. She says it was an operational clarification. He asks if the board voted on it. She hesitates. She says it was not required. He closes the folder. He says the complaint is dismissed. He says if Janice wants to pursue defamation, she needs to prove the statements were false. He says the evidence suggests they are true. He says court is adjourned. Janice is frozen. Her husband pulls her toward the door. I stay in my seat. I do not smile. I just pack up my binder and leave. That afternoon, the snow starts. By evening, we have 8 inches. I clear my driveway. I use the blower. I do not care anymore. I am done playing by rules that do not exist. I pile the snow on the curb. I salt the apron. I go inside. At 7, there is a knock. I open the door. It is not Janice. It is a tow truck driver. He says he has an order to tow my car for unpaid fines. I ask to see the order. He shows me a work slip. It has my address. It has my plate number. It does not have a signature. I ask who authorized it. He says the HOA. I tell him the fines are in dispute and there is no lien. He shrugs. He says he is just doing his job. I tell him if he hooks my car, I am calling the police. He looks at me. He looks at the car. He gets back in his truck. He idles in the street. I call the non-emergency line. I explain the situation. The dispatcher says an officer is on the way. The tow truck does not leave. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulls up. The officer gets out. He talks to the driver. He walks over to me. He asks if I have proof of ownership. I show him my registration. He asks if there is a court order. I say no. He goes back to the truck. He tells the driver to leave. The driver argues. The officer does not budge. The truck drives off. The officer tells me to document everything and file a complaint with the state towing board. I thank him. He leaves. I stand in my driveway in the snow, and I realize this is not going to stop unless I force it to stop. The next morning, I get a call from the property manager. She sounds nervous. She says the board is requesting a meeting with me. She says they want to resolve the dispute. I ask if Janice will be there. She pauses. She says Janice is stepping back from enforcement duties pending an internal review. I ask what changed. She does not answer. She just gives me a date and time. The meeting is in 3 days. I agree to attend. I hang up. I call Carl. He does not answer. I text him. He replies an hour later. He says the board received a complaint from the state about vendor contracting procedures. He says an auditor is reviewing the last 2 years of expenses. He says Janice is panicking. He does not say who filed the complaints. I do not ask. I know it was me. The meeting is on a Wednesday evening. I show up early. The clubhouse is empty except for the president, the treasurer, and the property manager. No Janice. I sit down. The president clears his throat. He says the board has reviewed my concerns and agrees that some enforcement actions were inconsistent with the covenant. He says the fines are being waived. He says the vendor contracts are being rebid. He says the board is implementing a new compliance review process. I ask if Janice is still on the board. He says she has resigned her enforcement role but remains a member. I ask if the height limit memo is rescinded. He says yes. I ask if I will receive a written confirmation. He says yes. I thank him. I stand up to leave. The property manager stops me. She hands me an envelope. Inside is a check for $1,200, reimbursement for legal fees and contractor deposits. I look at the president. He says the board wants to move forward in good faith. I take the check. I leave. 2 weeks later, the story breaks. A local news blog picks up the vendor audit. The headline is, HOA, board member resigns amid contracting scandal. The article names Janice. It names the LLCs. It names the insurance agent. It quotes the state auditor. The contracts are being canceled. The board is facing a class action demand from homeowners who paid inflated fines. Janice is not quoted. But the comments section is full of neighbors sharing their stories. I am not the only target. I am just the one who fought back. The annual meeting is in April. I show up. The room is packed. 50 people. Carl is there. He nods at me. Janice is in the back corner. She does not look at anyone. The president opens the floor for nominations. 3 people stand up and nominate new candidates. All 3 call for a full board replacement. The vote is unanimous. Janice is out. The president is out. The treasurer stays on for continuity, but his role is reduced. The new board president is a retired accountant who promises transparency and a full financial review. The meeting ends with applause. I do not stay for the reception. I go home. A month later, I get a letter from the new board. It is an apology. A formal, written apology for the enforcement actions taken against me under the previous administration. It acknowledges that the fines were improper and the process was weaponized. It thanks me for bringing the vendor issues to light. It invites me to join the compliance committee. I decline. I have had enough of HOA politics. But I keep the letter. I frame it. The final piece falls into place in June. A vendor publicly blacklists the HOA after Karen is caught ordering staged snow photos to use as evidence in violation cases. The contractor posts the email chain on social media. It goes viral locally. The HOA has to scramble for contractors during the next storm. The new board apologizes again. They offer discounted snow removal for everyone who was fined under the old system. I accept. My driveway gets plowed for free all winter. It is a small win, but it is a win. I run into Janice once more. It is at the grocery store in July. She is in the checkout line. She sees me. She looks away. I do not say anything. I do not need to. She knows. Everyone knows. You do not get an opinion, you get a fine schedule. That line does not work anymore. Because the fine schedule is gone, and so is she. At the next board meeting in August, the new president presents a budget review that reveals vendor favoritism across multiple service categories, not just snow removal. The findings trigger a full governance audit, and the HOA compliance process is audited and cleaned up within 90 days. Janice is forced to apologize on the record in front of the room at a special session, reading a statement prepared by the HOA attorney, while the entire meeting is recorded for the community file. When she finishes, someone in the back row mocks her old stopwatch and ruler routine by holding up a tape measure and clicking a timer app, and the room erupts in uncomfortable laughter. Karen's stopwatch and ruler routine gets mocked by the room, and the moment is so humiliating that she leaves halfway through the Q&A. I still live in Snowcap Ridge. The new board is not perfect, but it is fair. The rules are clear. The enforcement is consistent. I have not received a violation notice in 8 months. My snowblower runs on weekend mornings without complaint. My contractor is back. The curb strip is mine to manage. The small frozen padlock that Janice used as proof of blocked access is gone, cut off by the HOA maintenance crew, and tossed in the trash where it belonged all along. I keep my records. I keep my photos. I keep my timeline. Not because I expect another fight, but because I know how fast things can turn. And I know that silence makes people talk. I said almost nothing, because silence makes people talk. And in the end, the records did all the talking I needed. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.